Oxford in the state of Michigan in the United States. It was around 12:50 p.m. when the first sounds of gunfire were heard, which was only a few hours after school officials had a meeting with the shooter, identified as Ethan Crumbley. And this was in regards to his recent concerning behaviors. Now, after all was said and done, 4 individuals would be murdered and several others injured. So, how did this tragedy occur despite numerous opportunities to keep the school safe? And what makes this specific tragedy a first of its kind? Well, stick around and we will soon find out together. Hello, my lovely YouTube friends. I'm so happy to see you here today. So, for today, I have another true crime video for you all. Now, this case is a bit different in that it is focused on a mass murder, specifically a school shooting. Now, truthfully, school shootings are one of my biggest fears, and I always kind of find myself going down a very dark rabbit hole of information on various school shootings. So this particular case I really wanted to cover, honestly, due to its very unfortunate handling of an individual's mental health, and due to its honestly kind of unique and kind of groundbreaking sentence of not only the shooter, but of his parents as well. So we will get much more into that. I have a lot of notes here written. It might be a longer video, but I know all of you enjoy that. So, with all of that said, grab a soft blanket, maybe your favorite snack. Get nice and cozy, and let us get to ASMRing. Oxford, Michigan is a town of around 22,000 people. It is wedged between horse farms to its north and Detroit to its south. Oxford High School is the only high school in the town and really serves as the center for several of the town's events, most notably sporting events such as football. Now, our main characters, our main people in this case, actually really were not the type of people who even attended these types of school events. Rather, they had very different interests. So, person, kind of the type of guy who would always ask you to come over to their house and have a drink with them. So despite his pretty kind-hearted, go-with-the-flow nature, kind of innocent demeanor that James had, James actually also had a criminal history, which included writing bad checks, a DUI, and driving with a suspended license. Jen also has been charged in the past with writing bad checks and a DUI as well. And most of their crimes, from what I could find, occurred between 1995 and 2005, which was before their son Ethan was born. Now, I'm not too sure how James and Jen met. I do know that they met pretty shortly after James broke up with his girlfriend at the time that I believe he has a son with. I think one son, maybe two. I couldn't fully find that information. So they met shortly after he left that relationship and got married pretty quickly after meeting. And they were married in September of 2005 on a beach in Florida. And shortly after Jen and James were married, they had their only son together, Ethan, in 2006. And when Ethan was in elementary school, the Crumbly family moved to Oxford, Michigan, into a one-story, three-bedroom house. And over the years of living in this house, they became the owners of several different pet friends, including two dogs. Two dogs named Tink and Harley. Two cats named Stella and Dexter. And a chinchilla, which was supposedly Ethan's pet for a while. The Crumbly family was often regarded as pretty different compared to the rest of the families living on their street. So according to neighbors, in 2014 and 2015, Ethan was often left alone while his parents went out to bars, and this actually occurred so often that a neighbor reported his parents to Child Protective Services. However, nothing really came out of this report. And additionally, the family would pretty frequently light firecrackers in their yard, even though it really terrified their pets. And according to estate license upon settling in Michigan, and then she got a job as a social media assistant at a real estate company. And Jen quickly became the family's primary earner after she made her way up to marketing director. Well, James, on the other hand, kind of flip-flopped, made his way through various jobs, with his most recent job being an independent contractor for a technology company. Now, instead of attending the school events like most of the town did, Jen preferred to spend her time taking horse riding lessons, and she eventually did buy 2 horses, whose names were Shorty and Billy. She also was involved as a volunteer for the ski patrol at Pine Knob Resort, which was where she had skied when she was a kid. Her and James also played Oocher. I don't know how to pronounce that. Euchre. At a pub in town. And the family also occasionally went camping, kayaks and all. So, despite their fairly quiet lives in Michigan, James, who had 2 previous children from previous relationships, was pretty frequently in a long-distance combat over child support with the mother of one of his sons. That's kind of what I could find, so that makes me think presences felt very real to him. He would often ask his mom to come home early, and at one point he texted his mom, and this part's all in quotes, "There is someone in the house, I think. Someone walked into the bathroom and flushed the toilet and left the light on. And I thought it was you, but when I came out, no one was home. There is no one in the house though. Dude, my door just slammed. Maybe it's just my paranoia. But when are you going to get home?" And end quote. So about a week after that message, he sent a text that stated, and again in quotes, "Okay, the house is now haunted. Some weird stuff just happened, and now I'm scared. I got some videos and a picture of the demon. It is throwing bowls. I am not joking. It messed up the kitchen. I am just going to be outside for a while. Can you at least text back?" And end quotes. Now, evidence used in the trial showed that Jen did not ever text Ethan back after these concerning messages, which, like, your child is struggling. Like, if you were to receive that from, like, a friend or your child, immediate concern, and a not even text back. Yeah. Now, the next day, after these messages, Ethan had a meltdown, and Jen reportedly gave him something to help him sleep. And Jen texted James the next morning to check on Ethan, and in that text exchange, Jen decided that what was best for him was to eat, work hard, and not complain. In trial, this text exchange was used to show that Jen knew of her son's distress and did nothing to get him help, such as, for example, taking him to some type of mental health professional to be evaluated, to receive medication, to receive therapy, something. And it is said that Jen had health insurance through her job, but she did not have James nor Ethan on her plan. Alright. Now, in the spring of 2021, Ethan started sharing over text with a friend how he was feeling. And he stated that he got 17 hours of sleep over 5 days, was laughing and crying in the shower, and that he had tried to talk to his parents, but that they wouldn't listen. And on April 5th, 2021, Ethan shared with his friends that he wanted to call 911 on himself, but was afraid that his parents would be mad at him if he did so. And Ethan wrote to his friends, and this is in quotes, "I am going to ask my parents to go to the doctors tomorrow or Tuesday again." End quote. And he says again, because supposedly he tried to talk to his parents before, and his father told him to suck it up, and his mother laughed. So, this part just infuriates me research for this case, reading all of this, I felt so incredibly frustrated and disheartened, and it just truly makes me upset because of the fact that this type of exchange between parents and their children, in my experience, and as much as it hurts me to say this, it's not rare. Of course, this isn't every parent, right? But so many kids that I have currently kind of a lot of teens on my caseload, kind of teens and young adults, and there have been a lot of times where we have had some pretty in-depth discussions about their parents or just kind of their family's views, their family culture around mental health, around wellness, mental wellness, and receiving help and therapy, and being told to suck it up. And when these kids and these teens and these young adults are describing these experiences to me, I can feel the pain in their words, and it's almost like I can kind of feel or see that same pain in Ethan's voice when he was describing this to his friend, of just, he didn't want to get in trouble, to get help, to call 911. And it's him saying, I want to go talk to my parents again. Maybe they'll listen this time. It just, reading that and doing what I do and knowing that this happens, it's really sad, it's really scary, and I just want to just scream out and say, if a child is coming to you and sharing their pain and being vulnerable with you, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, I kind of grew up not being taken seriously with my physical pain, and that's a whole big old long thing, and being told that I was doing it for attention, and I very much so wasn't, because now I know as an adult what is wrong, and that it was very valid. Like, you listen, I beg of you, adults out there, listen when a young person comes to us and shares about their pain, because for them, that experience is very, very real, and we need to take it seriously. They deserve for us to take it seriously. So, I just very, very deeply feel for all of the kiddos out there who share their pain and are overlooked, and then awful, awful things can happen, such as this case. So, for adults out there, again, be that listening ear that young people very desperately need and deserve. We cannot underestimate the power of validation. It can take someone so far, so far. So to offer that to someone, if the moment presents itself, please, please do that. Okay, I just wanted to share that. Reading all of that was really hard for me because I just wanted to so desperately help this poor kid, and I know I'm kind of search it, by all means, go for it. I can't talk about harm to animals. That is one thing I just can't do. So, he began doing that, and he also began taking videos of himself handling his father's .22 caliber pistol. And Ethan sent a video to a friend, and later in the text exchange stated, "Now it's time to shoot up the school. JK, JK." And it is stated in court documents that earlier in the year, Ethan's grandmother had actually passed away, and Tink, the family's dog, had also passed away. And then around Halloween of 2021, Ethan's friend was admitted to a treatment facility, which basically left Ethan alone with no other person with whom he could share his thoughts and feelings with. So instead of talking with his friend, Ethan now spent his time looking at a website devoted to killings and school shootings. And he actually visited, according to kind of court documents, he visited this website 421 times. And he also kept a journal. And in that journal, an excerpt read, and this is in quotes, "I have fully mentally lost it after years of fighting with my dark side. My parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist." Honestly, so upsetting. Like, this kid wants help. Additionally, Ethan had several Instagram accounts, and his parents followed one of them. And on the one that his parents followed, he often posted images of deformed faces contorted to kind of express glee, but with very, like, misshapen, like, eyes, or very protruding jaws, or blank eyes, just very eerie. So, this takes us to the Friday after Thanksgiving in 2021. James purchased a 9mm gun with Ethan, who that weekend posted a photo of the gun on his Instagram and captioned it with, "My new beauty." Jen also took to social media to show off the new purchase and referred to it as Ethan's new Christmas present. Now on Saturday, so the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Jen took Ethan to a shooting range where she bought 100 rounds of 9mm ammunition and 2 paper targets for her and Ethan to practice shooting. And later that day, Jen posted on her Instagram a picture of the paper target riddled with holes and captioned it, "Mom and Son Day testing out his new Christmas present." Yeah. So, this brings us to the following Monday at school. Ethan was caught by his English teacher looking conversation with Ethan, discussing how, in quotes, guns are a hobby for a lot of people, and that's perfectly normal, but certain hobbies were better pursued at home, end quotes. To which Ethan agreed, and after receiving that phone call, Jen texted Ethan saying, "Seriously, looking up bullets at school?" To which Ethan explained the situation, and after a few texts back and forth, Jen joked and texted, "Did you at least show them a pic of your new gun?" And also later said, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." And when Ethan returned home from school after this incident, Ethan and his parents apparently had a very terrible argument, and later that night, Ethan wrote in his journal saying, and I quote, "The shooting is tomorrow. I have access to the gun and ammo. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. Sorry for never saying it back." End quotes. Yeah, that's a lot. A lot to process, a lot of background, a lot of just examples, evidence of where his mindset was and how his parents just they were not listening, they were not helping. My goodness. So all of that said, this now takes us to November 30th, 2021. It was a Tuesday, and the weather looked like it might snow. Jen went to work. James drove to the horse barn to attend to Billy's legs, Billy the horse, which apparently was at the time dealing with some sort of fungus. And Ethan went to school. And at 9:33 a.m., Jen texted James and said, in quotes, "Call now, emergency," end quotes. And she texted again at 9:38 saying, "Emergency." So what prompted these texts? Well, during second period, Ethan's geometry teacher walked past Ethan's desk and saw on his math sheet very alarming drawings. Now, the teacher took a photo of the math worksheet with the drawings and sent it to the dean of students, who was, at the time, his name was Nicholas Ejak. And on the worksheet, Ethan had drawn a pistol that kind of looked like the one his dad bought, a human figure riddled with holes, and a laughing, crying emoji. He had also written, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me. Blood everywhere. And the world is dead." And by the time that Ethan was pulled out of class, he had kind of scribbled over most of the drawings and words, kind of in an attempt to hide them, and had written instead, "OHS rocks. I love my life so much. We're all friends here. And harmless act." So, the geometry also alerted the school guidance counselor, Sean Hopkins, that he was found watching shootings on his phone. So after the second report on Ethan's behavior, Hopkins called Ethan to his office to talk. And in court, Hopkins stated that Ethan was compliant and understanding at first, but when Hopkins asked about the drawings, Ethan grew sad. And Ethan shared how his dog had died, his grandmother had died, his friend left, and basically how difficult quarantine was for him. How he had a bad argument with his parents the night before, kind of everything. And Hopkins kind of conducted a standard risk assessment for self-harm and asked Ethan whether he was a threat to himself or others. Ethan stated, "I can see why this looks bad. I'm not going to do anything." Ethan claimed that he was watching video games because he wants to be a video game designer, and that the drawings were sketches for a video game. So, despite this, Hopkins decided to contact Ethan's parents due to there being enough concern regarding ideation of hurting himself. However, Hopkins didn't ask any further questions regarding any type of plan to hurt himself or others. And kind of as a side note, for myself, when I'm assessing for a risk, I always ask for both, harm to self, harm to others. And I pretty much always will follow it up, even if the answer is no. Do you have a plan? Do you have access to means? I also will sometimes specifically ask, do you have access to firearms or other weapons in the home? Even if there's an answer of no, I might still go on and probe for those other things, because the answer might be no right now, but that might change, right? Our thoughts are so quick to change. We might say no right now, and in 10 minutes, we might have those thoughts. So, I like to probe for all of that. And I always make sure to ask for both harm to self and others. So, I don't know the extent of that line of questioning. I'm not saying the counselor did anything wrong per se. Just don't know how in depth they got with that type of questioning. And I'm also not sure. It says it's a school guidance counselor. I don't know if that is meaning like a mental health therapist with the training that we get, like a licensed therapist, or if they are more like on the academic side, which is a little different. I don't know. So if they also be used to represent a licensed counselor who focuses on mental health. So I'm not sure. So just a little kind of background of what I often do. I like to probe a lot, just to really cover everything, because we never know. And like I said, thoughts can change and come and go. So if there's any semblance of anything, I'm gonna say, alright, how can we keep the environment safe? Do you have access to things? Are there things we need to do to keep the environment safe? Let me call your parents. Let's talk to them about removing things and really getting in depth with all of that. So, again, not saying they did anything wrong, just sharing kind of what I would do, not necessarily would do, but what I often do, kind of the approach I often take. I just like to be very, very thorough with everything related to harm to self or others. So, after this discussion with Ethan, it was about 10:30 a.m. and Jen and James finally arrived to the school after being asked to attend a meeting regarding Ethan's behavior that morning. And Hopkins shared with Ethan's parents his concerns about Ethan being a danger to himself, and declared that he wanted Ethan to be seen by a mental health professional today, if possible, to which Jen immediately objected due to needing to return to work. Priorities, right? And Hopkins then stated that he wanted Ethan to be seen within 48 hours and would be following up. And then the meeting kind of ended abruptly. So during court proceedings, Hopkins shared that he had never seen parents so non-compliant when informed that their child might pose a danger to themselves. And also during court, the lawyer did bring up the fact that Hopkins, as a mandated reporter, would have been obligated to call CPS or 911 right away if Ethan was truly in danger from himself or his parents. And to this I do agree. Oftentimes, and again, this is all just my kind of experience, not saying this is fact or true or what should have been done, just my opinion, I guess. Oftentimes, if someone can't commit to safety, then we'll have to call the parents. And if the parents can't support their child's safety, I might kind of have to say, if you don't keep them safe, that will kind of trigger my mandate to report. Just, what's the word, not hard, but I can't think of another word, hard on the parents, just very strict of, if we can't keep this child safe, then this will happen. So, and others kind of believed that maybe the school could have asked more questions, maybe needed to do a little bit more in the moment, because over the subsequent months after the shooting, 9 civil lawsuits would be So, EJAC, the Dean of Students, joined the meeting about halfway through and decided that there was no discipline issue to be had. He was mostly concerned that Ethan was a danger to himself and did not want him to be alone. Ethan's parents, however, refused to take him home for the school day due to them both needing to return back to work. And Ethan said that he just wanted to continue on about his day, and it was ultimately decided that Ethan could return back to class. So EJAC even went to retrieve Ethan's backpack for him, which I believe had the gun in it at the time, to kind of allow him to go back to class because he left his backpack in his previous class. So basically, despite concerns about Ethan's safety for himself and kind of no inquiry about the safety of others or about the environment, keeping it safe, access to things, Ethan was allowed to continue about his school day. No support from his parents and no pushback from school officials that he needed to be removed from school for the rest of the day for his safety and the safety of others. So, this moment, I can imagine, probably haunts many people. And a little after the meeting ended at 12:20 p.m., Jen texted Ethan asking if he was okay, to which he replied he was and had just gotten back from lunch. Jen then said, "You know you can talk to us. We won't judge." And Ethan replied, "I know, thank you. I'm sorry for that. I love you." It was 12:42 p.m. when he sent that text. And at around 12:50 p.m., Ethan went into the school restroom between classes, where he took the pistol out of his backpack, and at around 12:51 p.m., he opened fire on students and staff in the southern end of the school who were transitioning from one class to the other. And when students started to flee, Ethan methodically and deliberately shot into classrooms and at students who were unable to escape. However, due to the quick response by students and staff, Ethan was unable to enter any classrooms as the doors had been shut and barricaded as previously taught to students and staff in school shooter drills. And if you're not from the United States, yes, schools have now school shooter drills. And according to students, a voice over the intercom alerted them that an active shooter was on campus, prompting students and teachers to spring into action. And at 12:51, the first of hundreds of phone calls came in to 911, alerting of the school shooting. Now, first responders actually arrived within 2 to 3 minutes, and once they were on campus, Ethan surrendered was placed on the S-word watch. Now, 3 students, Madison Baldwin, age 17, Tate Meyer, age 16, and Hannah St. Juliana, age 14, were tragically killed at the scene. And this part, Tate Meyer reportedly was shot while attempting to stop Ethan, which is so sad and so just heroic. Yeah. And on December 1st, Justin Schilling, age 17, died at the hospital from his injuries. So in total, 4 people were killed and 8 others were injured by Ethan's horrifying acts of violence. Now, minutes after the shooting occurred, James was driving for DoorDash and saw police cars heading towards the school. And in response to this, which pretty telling, he rushed back home to look for his gun. And he called Ethan around 1 p.m. and did not get a reply. He then called Jen, who had already left work after being informed that there was an active shooter at Ethan's school. And reportedly, Jen screamed upon finding out the news and rushed out of work. Jen responded to Ethan's previous text around 1:15, saying, "I love you too. Are you okay?" And at 1:22, she sent a text that read, "Ethan, don't do it." So telling. Like, so telling. They knew. Like, they knew before they knew that it was actually him. Then James called 911, to whom he attempted pretty frantically to explain that he had a missing gun in his home, and basically just tried to explain the entire situation regarding Ethan and his behavior at school earlier that morning. So, after the shooting occurred and Ethan was in custody, James and Jennifer went to the local police station where they were interviewed. James made phone calls to lawyers, and Jen made phone calls to her boss, begging her boss to let her keep her job. Again, good to know where her priorities lie. And 3 days after the shooting, on December 3rd, Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald announced that she would be charging Jennifer and James as well with the crimes. And after they learned that they were also going to be charged, the couple was supposed to appear with their attorneys to turn themselves in, but failed to do so. They instead fled their home and holed up in an artist's studio in a Detroit warehouse, which belonged to one of Jen's acquaintances. And according to their lawyer, they left their home because they did not feel safe there due to the press being camped out outside and due to the death threats swamping their phones. Sure. police received a tip from a business owner who found the Crumbley's vehicle in his parking lot in Detroit. And at around 1:30 a.m. on December 4th, police established a perimeter around the area and eventually found them hiding out in the studio and arrested the pair. And according to prosecutors, they had four burner phones, 4 gift cards, 10 credit cards, and $6,600 in cash. They had also cleaned out Ethan's bank account, and it is reported that Jen told her friend her son's destiny is done and that she has to take care of herself now. Yeah, police at a press conference after their arrest stated that the Crumbleys were very distressed during their arrests and that there was essentially no indication that they had planned to surrender. Like, they were in it for the long haul of making a run for it. Now, before moving on to the sentencing phase of both Ethan and his parents, let us first take a look at the discourse surrounding the sentencing of Ethan's parents. So basically, Jennifer and James would be charged with 4 counts each of involuntary manslaughter, charges that carry a maximum penalty of 15 years. And Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald, announcing the prosecution of Ethan's parents, was basically considered pretty extraordinary due to the fact that parents of a school shooter have never been charged before for also being responsible for the killings. And maybe in some cases, parents have been charged with child neglect, but in this case, the Crumbleys were being charged for the killings themselves. However, McDonald felt that this was appropriate in this case, given the clear neglect of safety exhibited by Jen and James. This was a bit of a gamble, however, according to other people who worked in the prosecutor's office. They kind of were a bit concerned about the case, given that Oxford is a city where the use of guns is considered pretty normal, and it's not uncommon to have citizens own several guns and post pictures of them, especially given that Michigan is an open carry state and concealed carry permits are reportedly easy to obtain. There is also no safe storage laws in Michigan, meaning that if there were guns that were unlocked in the home, no crime would have been committed. But despite this, McDonald declared confidence in being able to prove that Jennifer and James Crumbley grossly neglected their parenting duty by ignoring the obvious signs of danger that their son presented, and were thus also responsible for the deaths of Madison, Tate, Hannah, was filed in relation to a gunfire incident on school grounds, and this charge held due to the fact that his actions were intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, which in this case would have been the Oxford High School community. Now, later, Ethan was actually charged as an adult. Now, something that I thought was further appalling in this case was that Ethan's parents hired a lawyer for themselves, but they did not hire a lawyer for Ethan. I don't know. You would think, yes, what he did was awful, is most likely going to be found guilty no matter who's representing him. But still, like, I don't know. I just think that made me just kind of take a double take, like, really? Okay. So, in January 2022, Ethan pled not guilty and then announced a few days later that he would be pleading insanity. And then, in October 2022, he pled guilty to all charges and withdrew his intent to pursue an insanity defense. And during questioning on the same day, he admitted that his own money was used to purchase the weapon and that the gun was not locked up. And on September 29th, 2023, Judge Kwame Rowe ruled that Ethan Crumbley was eligible for a sentence of life without parole. And on December 9th, 2023, he was sentenced to exactly that, life without parole. And before being sentenced, Ethan apologized to the courtroom, and he stated, and I quote, "Any sentence that they ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me." So, let us return to the trial for Ethan's parents. So, after awaiting trial for nearly 2 years while in jail, Jennifer and James were granted separate trials. And Jennifer's trial ended on February 6th, 2024, where she was found guilty on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And during the trial, while on the stand, so she did take the stand, she claimed that she would not have done anything differently. And also during the trial, which I found, again, very telling, Jennifer was reportedly having an affair with a firefighter captain, and she texted him after the shooting, and I quote, "I failed as a parent. I failed miserably." Yet she wouldn't do anything different. And James's trial concluded on March 14th, 2024, where he was also found guilty on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And Jennifer and James were actually just recently sentenced, both on the same day, on April 9th, 2024. And they were both sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. And during the sentencing phase, family members of the victims spoke out and expressed their disdain witnesses both read statements as well, with James stating that if he had known about how Ethan was struggling, he would have done things differently. Really, bro? And Jennifer extended her apologies for the pain that was caused, but she mostly focused on how she felt the prosecution misrepresented her family. Okay. So, I wanted to end this video with a little excerpt I found kind of detailing the victims. Of course, I feel it's very important to kind of spend some time honoring their lives. I wish I could do more. I often do in my true crime cases, kind of do longer intros to the victims. This case was a little different, so I wish I could do more. That could be a whole separate video in itself. So just to put and to end with something to remember the people who were the fallout, the collateral damage of this awful, awful case of failure on so many ends. So many people made the wrong decision, and they lost their lives because of it. So please let us remember them for the life that they lived, not the death that they endured. So, Hannah St. Juliana was 14 years old. She was joyful with a sarcastic sense of humor, a volleyball and basketball player, and close with her family, especially her older sister, which honestly, that's really hard to read because I have an older sister, and the thought of losing a sibling, tragic. She loved Christmas and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Madison Baldwin was 17. She loved monster drinks and was smart and shy and an incredible artist. She doodled on everything, including gum wrappers, and had already been accepted to several colleges on full scholarships. Tate Meyer, number 42 on the football team, was a leader. Even adults quieted when he spoke. You had no choice but to follow him and do the right thing, says Mike Aldred. And I think this is very much shown in the fact that he did try to stop the shooter. Very much shows someone's character to do that, to attempt to do that. Yeah. Justin Schilling was 17, and he was co-captain of the bowling team. He was smart beyond his years, hilarious without even trying, said his close friend Olivia McMillan when she stood up at a school board meeting. He died the day after the shooting, and 2 days later, a vigil gathered at McLaurin Hospital as his body was taken off life support and wheeled into an operating room where he donated his organs. So, that is the case of the Oxford school shooting. I think this very prevalent mental health aspect in this. Again, not in any way saying what he did was okay. It was tragic. All of it was tragic. He was failed and thus hurt other people who did not deserve by any means to be the fallout of Ethan's parents' neglect. It just, infuriated me on so many levels. I think something that I wanted to point out that also is infuriating is the lack of therapists on school campuses. And if there are therapists on school campuses for students, oftentimes there's like one or two for like all the students. Like, it's not possible to be helping that many students. It is just not. You might see them once every few months, and some students need weekly care. And I can imagine there's like how many kids on a high school campus, like my class had, I want to say, close to 1,000 students in just one class. So, and to put it into perspective, I have a max of 26 clients that I see weekly. So can you imagine, like, that fills up my day, an 8-hour work day, and I am swamped. So to picture how many students these counselors have to see, it's just not feasible. It's not, and there needs to be just so much more. I think that, and just kind of the lack of inquiry about if he had a plan or if he had a means. And honestly, the stigma around getting mental health care, it is so needed. It is so normal. And if someone is coming to you saying that they are struggling mentally, you listen, you support them. Yeah, there's a lot on this. I don't want to ramble too long. I've been recording for almost 2 hours, so I'll just leave you with, let us remember everyone who was injured and everyone who died as a result of this really, really tragic chain of events. So, I genuinely, my heart goes out to them and their families. Like I said, school shootings, wrong place, wrong time is my biggest fear. And gosh, I truly, truly feel for that. Like the fear, I can't. So, my heart goes out. I hope we can do better. Yeah, I'm doing my part in the ways that I can to support and help people. So, I really hope we can see, I don't know, some change in some way from this case. No idea what that looks like. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to go now. Please have conversations about this case in the comments. Correct me on things if I mispronounce things. If you have things to say, of course, please keep it respectful and kind. I'm open to conversations